Every day, our lives are changed by history.
We are one people, all of us.
Leaders, politics.
Nobody's ambition is what
I have fought a very family.
Natural occurrence, war, and the world economy.
I belong to everybody, and I belong to nobody.
ATN covers it all on ATN Politics today.
Welcome back to Atlantic Blowout, and on to our next story. Buhari lauds the Bank of Industry for creating 9 million jobs. So he goes on to say more than 9 million jobs has been created in the past 7 years, and he has also commended the Bank of Industry for disbursing over 1.24 trillion to 4.2 million beneficiaries in micro, small, medium and large enterprises. And he goes on to say that he is commending them for the virtually inaugurated second tower of the Bank of Industry. And so this is some people read this story and see it and say, oh wow, this is something lifting. It's quite inspiring to know that that Bank of Industry is working this well, focused on the economic development of the country and the well-being of Nigerians. Even our president has gone out to say, in order to further enhance its capacity to impact the industrial sector on a transformational scale, I approve the issuance of a sovereign guarantee to help the bank raise funds in the Eurobond market. I'm glad to note that the bank has recently completed the transaction by raising 750 million euros from international investors. So the proceeds of these Eurobonds will be disbursed to large, medium and small enterprises and women and entrepreneurs with bankable projects. It is commendable that the bank source its own funds and lending basis based on investment grade. This story just goes on, but let's come into the studio here. I have he is called a principal because he is also a business analyst and good at what he does. Olumatia is still my guest this morning. This story, what's your general take on this story? I don't want to put you in a space yet, but let me just get your overview on the story.
I kind of feel the story is outrageous.
Outrageous. Wow.
Pretty outrageous, but quite calculated. If you ask me, I
Calculated.
think yes, quite
You've
calculated.
used outrageous and you've used calculated this morning. How come?
I feel that, I mean, this is the end of another 8 years for Mr. President.
Okay.
He needs to justify, make himself look good. This is me opining that the statement is from probably one of his aides and trying to make him feel good. It's simple. The Bank of Industry is targeted at building enterprises. Yeah?
Yeah.
If you had switched to using that conversation and said that the Bank of Industry had created XYZ number of enterprises, maybe it will give you a good. The Bank of Industry is not designed to create jobs. That's the first flaw.
Okay.
Their job is to create, enhance, expand industries by giving, right? So at the end of the day, they have taken 7 years. This year will make it, this year into next year will make 8 years of the current leadership. Yeah. So what they are trying to infer calculatedly is that they have been able to create from this arm 9 million jobs. 9 million jobs. You know, if we had 9 million jobs created, Nigeria would be better for it. But we're not there yet. Yeah. So it's all them press things.
Okay, so but some people would say that somehow this thing has touched them one way or the other. It is a story of. It is said that investments have been done, been put into different places and enterprises. Maybe saying they've invested in enterprises and those enterprises have grown to the point of being able to hire labor. Maybe that's how they're trying to explain it. What do you think?
It's still outrageous.
Oh.
However they try to explain it. Of course, I do know that they have reached some people. I know a few people who have been reached, but it's an idea of taking a few and blowing it out and making it sound like so much.
Okay.
But it is not that much.
Okay, so Shola is sorted now. Good morning again, Shola. Shola, can you hear me? Go ahead.
Can you hear me clearly now?
We can hear you, Shola. Go ahead.
Okay, good morning, nearby. Good morning, Olimati.
Good morning to you, Shola.
Yeah, it's good to start a new month and weekend. What do you think?
Very good. Happy new month to you.
Yeah, so we have about 4 days, 3 or 4 days of the month to roll weekend at least. Thank God it's Friday. We can continue to look at the government agencies and what they are trying to put in the space, put out there for Nigerians and to the world to see. But we're still not going to let it lie. We cannot allow it to lie because there are a lot of contradictions when it comes to government reports, especially when it coming from government agencies.
Yeah.
I just want us to really check these contradictions. The Ministry of the Bank of Industry is bringing out figures of creating 9 million jobs. Despite coming from judging by what they have created, the templates, the platforms, expanding the industries, seeing how people come in and benefit. But from the National Bureau of Statistics, up to now, we're still saying Nigerian unemployment is not getting anything reduced. It's not coming down at all. It's going higher. So, which of the report do you think, Mr. President, he shows to believe the one he lacked? But where are we having these contradictions?
Well, I think we're having, when you say contradictions, it's a little technical. Contradiction, yes, I think there's a contradiction on the side of Mr. President and the guys at the Bank of Industry. Yes, I do think. But National Bureau of Statistics, again, I dare to say that they are not up to date with statistics. Because we have issues with different regulatory facets, and a lot of people are not even plugged into the system for the National Bureau of Statistics to claim to have actual statistics of the number of employment that we have in this country. So there is lapse on this side and there is lapse on this side, and there is controversy and circumvention and all of what you think upon the lapses. So it's a terrible chaos. There is no convincing point on either side, and then on the back of the failure of convincing points, we have contradictions.
On a very good day, we think we shouldn't be playing politics on certain things in the country.
Well,
is it a good way to go? When we are coming with this kind of, I don't know how to quote this, I don't know how to qualify this statement, because it's not in tandem with the reality on ground.
I mean, you have just answered it, because the fact that it's not in tandem with the reality on ground is a problem, because when we cannot identify or stay true to the problem, we can't even solve the problem. So we have an issue of unemployment, yeah, and we are not true with the issue, then we cannot even create employment, because we are not being honest with the situation on ground. So until we begin to become honest with the situation on ground, we will not be able to solve necessary problems. We are not in a good space.
What will have been the ideal things to put in together to really justify this statement? Which area do you think the government will have looked into before coming out with this statement? If really we have 9 million jobs in the country.
The point here is that's very long research, because Mr. President is just interested in this statement came out during the when he had to inaugurate a tower and the BOI center, right? So that's where this statement came out. So there was no time really to go back and say we want to check this and we want to check this and we want to check that before making that statement. He needed a statement to scale through. Probably had gotten a direct report from the leadership at BOI, but there's a whole lot, and that's not what you want to check when you want to go and commission a tower. But then again, we need to come back and look at our system. That's the most important thing. We need to come back and look at our system, look at our key performing indexes, and make sure that these things are right, so that we can have best judgment on what is on ground and deliver on the back of that. The BOI needs to go back again and review her activities over the last 7 years and be honest with Nigerians. It doesn't take anything to be honest with Nigerians.
Apart from being honest, research, mostly one has to carry out a very scientific approach before we are bringing out this report. So most of our statements should be verifiable. Well,
like you say, one has to carry out a scientific approach, but I do not expect the Bank of Industry to carry out a scientific approach on data they should have already. A scientific approach is for you, a scientific approach is for me, a scientific approach is for anybody outside the system. Those who are in the system should have collated data as per what they do per time. This does not need scientific approaches. That's why I said honesty. They have to be honest. They have actual data of what they have been doing over the years. They don't need forensic, they don't need analytics. They just need to put out the actual data that they have. That's why I insist that they need to be honest with Nigerians.
You are not really in good time with these reports because you don't believe it.
No, I don't.
What are the indices you are expecting? Can you just let out them? Maybe this area you're expecting so thing. This should be a good indicator. Let us know for the purpose of enlightenment.
I'm not looking for indices as you would insist. Yeah. What I am saying is, don't tell us about job creations. The BOI was not set up for job creation, so don't tell us about job creations. Tell us about the industries and the enterprises that you have been able to set up. That we can verify. But when you tell us about job creations, it's tough to verify. Job creations from where? That would be the question. How do I create an...
You mean they are going out of their scope?
Exactly, my point exactly. So they are supposed to be telling us that we have created XYZ number of limited liability companies, XYZ number of... That way, we can now say, okay, these organizations have been created. And if we choose to probe further to know how many people these organizations employ. Small scale businesses, are they employing between 1 to 5? Are they employing between 9 to 10? Are they employing between 100 to 300? That we can analyze. But let us first know. 9 million is bogus. The question is 9 million from where? From what industry? What sector? What enterprise? That's the conversation we should be having.
You feel that if this statement is coming out from If Mr. President is lauding the operation of the National Directorate of Employment, you will not be having problem with it.
Well, I don't understand your question at the point. Can you rephrase?
Well, I mean that if this kind of statement, Mr. President today is lauding or praising the report from the National Directorate of Employment, the ND, you will not be having issue with it.
I dare to say on national TV, the president has not said anything correct in the last 8 years.
Okay, thank you, Oluwati.
All right, so I know that Agaji is set to join us from Lagos. Agaji is the business person when it comes to conversations around business. He will do us very good. Good morning, Agaji.
Good morning. I'm just laughing near Barry.
Why?
Well, I hope nobody's calmed you this morning because it's April Fool's Day. I'm hoping that the day will run smooth without anybody getting into our heads and I'm pranking us in a very bad way.
Yeah.
Anyway, I just like, I guess, to go back a little bit to when he was saying it was laughable that the president is saying jobs are being created by an agency or an institution that should be growing industry. So I'm wondering how you're able to separate the growing of industries and the employment that comes from the growth of that industry.
Yeah.
What actually should the Bank of Industry be doing that does not necessarily translate to what could be said to be giving employment to Nigerians? What specific things are they supposed to be doing that we cannot now say they have created jobs, they have given employment to Nigerians? Why did you have to separate it? Let me just understand what you meant by that.
Agaji, I think you have asked a brilliant question. It's sometimes I answer questions and I leave loopholes, so you found that loophole and I can answer it. I have said the responsibility of the Bank of Industry is to create enterprises, affect industries. And honestly, you cannot separate this from job creation. However, I say that 9 million is too wide a number. And if that is the case, I am requesting that the Bank of Industry let us know what enterprises, what industries they have affected. I would prefer if the Bank of Industry says, in the course of the last 7 years, in the course of the last 4 years, we have been able to set up 500 companies. I would prefer that than to go and say we have been able to set up 9 million. Let me again remind you that the bulk of businesses we have in this country are small businesses, SMEs. SMEs run between 1 to 5 staff. SMEs run between 1 to 5 staff. Yeah, a lot more businesses are run by a single individual. So how do you exactly intend to put 9 million without actually deciphering where 9 million is coming from, or the houses that house a set of these 9 million people? That's the conversation. We don't have that.
It's not very clear. It's also doubtful, like you said, that our data can be accurate because from experience, we've seen that figures are just being doled out.
Yeah.
But in your experience, how would you rate the activities of Bank of Industry in the last maybe 3-4 years in Nigeria?
In the last 3-4 years, I would rate them a 5. Because
over what?
Over 10. Let's keep it over 10. Yeah, because first of all, the Bank of Industry has to source her own funds, and that could be a very strenuous task, to source our own funds and convince people that they are going to get the returns on their investment. And I can assure you that it's not as easy as it seems, because most businesses fail in the first 5 years. And if these businesses are honestly going to fail in these first 5 years, that is by statistics, there is no guarantee, again, that the Bank of Industry would be able to recoup some of these funds. So it is a strenuous task. They have to give investors return on their investment as promised, and they have to deal with the fact that businesses are going to run down. 2020, 2021 was not a very good year globally. So a lot of businesses that may have received funding from the Bank of Industries definitely had gone under. And that's going to be a loss on their own side. So I will give them a 5. On the other part, there's the politics of this game. Yeah. So they are trying to please those in the higher authority by giving out opportunities, I dare say again, to some of the people that have not earned the right to be partakers of those opportunities. They are doing quite a tasking responsibility. We can't take it away from them. We will commend them, but I rate them a 5.
But how tied is this Bank of Industry to the federal government? How much sponsorship, how much funding do they get from the federal government, or are they just independent and doing their thing?
The Bank of Industry, though tied to the government, have to source their funds. Their funds don't come from the government. They source their funds themselves from investors from all over the world.
Okay, because I was wondering, at some point the government said they were disbursing funds from their bachalut, and they had trader money, market money, and all that. And the involvement of Bank of Industry was really foggy. I didn't really understand how it was, and I thought this was the kind of institution that could have spearheaded this kind of operations, but they were sidelined. That's why I asked that question: how tied they are to the federal government and what function they perform in that regard. I'll go back now to Niabari.
All right, thank you so much, Agaji. And we'll go on a short break. When we come back, of course, Rep wants Nigerians to bear arms. Think about that. Would that be a case of martial law? Considering. When we come back, the Atlantic Blowout continues. Don't go anywhere.
Okay.
Welcome back to Atlantic Blowout right here on Atlantic Television Network. I am Niabari Fakai. On to this next conversation. The majority leader of the House of Representatives, Rep. Ado Dogowa of APC Kano, said on Thursday that it was time Nigerians were allowed to bear arms to defend themselves. In a quote, he said, with all sense of responsibility, I think Nigerians at this point should be allowed to bear arms. Nigerians won't be allowed to take arms in defense of their innocent souls and to defend their hard-earned resources and property. Nigeria should not fail. Let Nigerians organize themselves in a form of civil defense and defend their innocent souls, he said. So he was contributing to the motion moved by Representative Shehu Balarabe of Kaduna in plenary on the need to curtail increasing banditry in Birni Giwa Federal Constituency in Kaduna State. So it goes on to say, while killing and kidnapping continue like this on a daily basis, those of us who are representatives of the government become speechless in the discharge of our duties to defend the actions of government. This is a report from one local government out of 774 local governments in the country. The case of Giwa is not just what happened last week. It has been engulfed in crisis, banditry, and killings in the past 3 years. So Giwa in Kaduna State, where security agencies are most represented in the north, why should these things continue to happen? Government and officials of government have to rise to their responsibilities and call a spade a spade. If it's funding, we all know we do not have any challenge funding security agencies, and that's what he says. So, but this is it seems like a script from an end time movie, at a point where I mean, it's a collapse going on. If you happen to watch the Book of Eli, you realize that a lot of dark people were trying to strive and get through for themselves. But this is a picture that, if we don't look at it like this, we may not understand what the story means. I mean, when a rep is calling that people should be allowed to bear arms, that means it's on a level martial law, you know. But I'll come to Olumati Isaiah, because this is something that I know that you want to have a good input on. But what's your general story on this? Your general perspective on the story?
I think the statement is coming from a place of concern, but then again, it's a very emotional statement to make. We are currently in a very volatile state as Nigerians, and it's going to be chaos at another level if you begin to put arms in the hands of regular people. I'm from the South, and I know what we experienced having arms run in the streets. It may seem like a good idea in the face of the need to self-defense or to self-defend. However, it can boomerang in ways we do not imagine, because the streets are volatile, very volatile. But like he also rightly said, that funding, if the challenge, if it were up to funding, then we do not have an issue with funding. Now, on the back of that, it is important that the security agencies and personnel that go out to stand in the field fighting insurgencies should be well funded and equipped. Over and over again, we have had most of them literally risk their career to come out on social media and cry at the limitation with the equipment that they have. They have limited rounds of bullets, they have limited guns, they have limited vehicles, and this country has what it takes to fund these agencies. What is required is proper funding. Again, we have some of the best teams when we talk about the military power across the world. This issue of banditry cannot defile us as a people, except, of course, those at the helm of affairs at a level have refused to take responsibility as it should be.
Okay. So let's come down now. When someone gets into, when someone is voted into office, it is saying that the primary assignment of that person is to protect the lives and properties of the people who are their citizenry. Now, at the point where a rep is saying this, and he's talking about the government people not being able to do what they are supposed to do, is he asking Nigerians to accept to carry guns because the leaders have refused to lead us? So we should just all know that we are all by ourselves. I mean, I believe it was an MI song or Brimo song, one of those guys that but the song was local government. It said if you're a Nigerian, if you do this one, if you give power to yourself, if you provide security for yourself, you are a local government, right? Have we come to that point where we all now become, as individuals, local governments? You have to take your kids to school, and while you take them to school, you have to take them to karate class, you have to take them to guerrilla warfare survival class, amongst other things, because we know that these bandits are doing, it was a security expert that pointed out on this show that the method is guerrilla warfare. The method is they use guerrilla tactics, and so for Nigerians to prepare, is it only guns? Should we now start having classes, or parts of our curriculum should now be designed to understand that insurgency may happen and prepare for it?
Well, it actually, at this point, it is wisdom to begin to prepare, to learn how to defend oneself. And this is part of the idea with NYSC. However, in that regards, NYSC really has failed because it seems to be that time has overrun the essence. You know, so the speaker, of course, unconsciously is saying to us that the government is incapable of defending the people. And it really, because they are incapable of defending the people, then we must now stand as complementary to defense, as it were. It's a very sorry place to be.
Okay, so I'll go over to Abuja on this one now. Shola, over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Fakai. If we follow the trend event properly as far as insecurity is concerned in this country, the rep in particular is only adding its voice to the calling over time, because we have had the governor of Nassau of Castina make the same statement. The governor of Benue State, Sam has made the same statement. This is where insecurity has reduced this country to. In a very good situation, life and property needs to be protected. Olumati, do we need any legal framework for freeborn before they can protect themselves?
Well, no, we don't need a legal framework for protection. We don't. Protection is a human right. However, there has to be a legal framework to bear arms at a level. Okay, so we can't go around wielding guns of all kinds and wielding bombs and all of those. There should be a legal framework that decides who has the right to bear arms at that level. But even when there is a legal framework, there are still levels to these things.
When Marundas are going about with their weapons, causing mayhem, killing people, in the face of these Maruda actions, what do you expect the Nigerians to do?
Well, I do expect Nigerians to defend themselves, but there has to be a system that is guided by the social justice system that says you can bear arms at this level if you can clear yourself. But trust me, if we make it an open system, we will go into multiple wars in this country, from cult groups to banditries to individuals. Anybody can claim that anybody was trying to attack them, and so they had to, in the name of self-defense, take that person out. You know, we are going to have a hard time in this country if we go by that way. And it's going to be, if we complain that we are suffering insurgency and the country is not safe, then it will be 3 times much more unsafe.
So where do we go from here?
Where do we go from here? The government now has to take responsibility. See, at the end of the day, it falls back to the government. The government has to take responsibility in terms of funding and making sure that those who are saddled with the responsibility of combat, being in the combat field, are well equipped with all that is needed to fight this war. Whether these guys are approaching tactically or with guerrilla warfare, I am guaranteed that we have what it takes within the Nigerian army, at least, to handle not just the Nigerian army, the Air Force and the Navy. We have what it takes to go head to head with these people and defeat them. I still insist that when insurgency has lasted for a long time, then the government has a hand in it.
Okay, thank you about that.
Yes, sir.
Thank you very much.
All right, Agaji, this is you now.
Yes, I was going to ask Isaiah to compare the pros and cons of people bearing arms, but he has already painted a picture of what it's going to be, and it's a no-no for him because of what he has said. The disadvantages will be far higher than the advantages. But the root question will be, in the first place, why is there so much insecurity in Nigeria? Because if you cannot identify the problem, then the solution will be a very difficult thing. So maybe when we find the problem, we can see how we can solve it or how we can go around it. So what are the things that you think, Isaiah, are the reasons for insecurity, so much insecurity in Nigeria? Some people blame it on hunger. but it may be beyond that. So what do you think?
I think that leadership, we have a failed leadership system. I think that we have also failed in terms of communication. We have also failed in terms, hunger is a very key. So, hunger is a wholesome term. It's unemployment, it's no money in the streets, it's no infrastructure. All of these put together have caused the challenge that we are facing. And people feel that if they are able to take up arms, they can gain. I mean, over time it has been proven that one of the easiest ways to get government attention is to take up arms. And for the life of it, I don't understand why we have to get to that point. We had it with the Niger Delta in terms of men and all them guys. Now we are having it again in terms of whether they are unknown gunmen, whether they are bandits, as you like, whether they are Boko Haram. We are having it also with the IPOB and all of that. All of these would have been easy to manage if communications were right, if the government had gone around correctly in terms of creating employments for the people, if education was easy to access and it were right, all of this would have been managed. If politics was run on the back knowing that you are leading a people with the hope of giving these people a better life, some of these things would have been better managed.
I don't know about hunger. I'm trying to wrap my head around the fact that an AK-47, for instance, costs about $800. That's quite some amount of money that a poor man should go and get them many to come and operate and become the unknown gunman. I don't know how a poor man can afford that and then go into the streets and begin to torment people. Do you really think poverty is just is a great reason for this, or some people somewhere are just behind what is happening to us?
Poverty is not a good reason. There will be no good reason to take a bad reason out. Okay? So poverty is not a good reason. AK-47s are expensive. However, refer back to my statement last time when I said that if we have insurgency of this type last a long time, the government is behind it. So best believe there are people funding these processes. Okay, there are people funding these processes, and they are funding it with public funds for whatever cause that they are trying to fight. These guys who are willing to bear these arms are bearing the arms because they get some kind of stipends. If they didn't get any kind of stipends from it, if they didn't get any kind of survival from it, they will not be willing to engage. Again, I come from the South. I understand what it means to have guns in the streets. Yeah? And it's not a good place. This is not a good suggestion, because if we have a lot of people wielding guns, we'll all may not be able to sleep at night.
Yes. There was once, I think my father said, if you have a gun in your house, the next thing is the itch that will come with it. Let me learn how to shoot it. And sometimes you don't know when you just use it. So it's better not to have it so that you don't get excited about it and trying to use it. You'll be asking yourself all the time, when can I use this? And then the slightest provocation may make you use it. Anyway, it's a dicey situation in Nigeria, and I do hope that there's a solution that will be found for all this. Yeah, very back to you.
All right, so I'll do this last one now, because we were still talking about guns, and we know that what will be called one of the most civilized nations in the world still have provision for gun licensing and the like. So self-defense, someone should own a gun and have it. But I'm thinking about it now too. But I asked the question, and I would love for you to help me understand it. Is it that we should be talking about guns, or like the idea of guns for self-defense, or should we be talking about preparing the minds of Nigerians to handle security from the root? Because these things are not, while they look complex, while they look complex, if someone who's a thinker and a strategic leader would say, it is not hard to handle, it's not difficult to handle, because these guys don't operate in isolation.
Yeah.
They go through communities. They know people who know people. There is an entire region that attention can be dedicated to, and they can be fished out. So what should Nigerians really do? Because if, as we've heard it now, these conversations are now being brought up in the sense of security. A basic Nigerian who is watching, what should we do?
This is what I think we should do. Basic Nigerians should prepare. I mean, for the life of it, I grew up knowing that every Nigerian man should have a machete in his house. You know, just close under your bed.
You grew up knowing that?
I grew up knowing that, and I think it should retain. And this is deeply rooted in community system of security. So we are going back again. Community policing is becoming very necessary as we go forward. Yeah, in some parts of the east, even in the south, we have them. I think in parts of the south, we also have them under different names. And the communities are becoming safer because they have instituted some measure of community policing. It brings us back to the conversation of state policing also, where the state has autonomy over her security agencies. And really, at the point where we are going, it becomes imperative that we have to give these thoughts deep considerations. When we talk about the US and the fact that people can have gun licensing, again, like when I spoke with Shola, it is regulated. Not everybody has the right to bear arms. Not everybody has the right to have a licensed arm. In Nigeria too, you can actually own a licensed arm. But the conversation around making owning arms an easy access, because that's what it is, that's what he is saying that he is not saying. The conversation around making arms to become easy access in the hands of regular everyday people in their numbers, because you are not going to come to a community of 100 and arm 10. You have to arm the 100. You are not going to say in a community we can only give license to 10 people. If you give license to 10 people, what is the guarantee that at every needed point in time, the 10 people are available for whoever is most fragile? So everybody therefore needs to be armed. And I say if we get to that point and we go through with this idea, we are not going to be talking a Nigeria with green. We are going to be talking a Nigeria with rivers of blood.
Yeah, but if I follow your analogy right now, it means you actually grew up just with the basic understanding that you should bear arms.
Of course.
A machete is enough to take out, considering if you know how to use it. So, are you saying now that it's already a mindset? It's not something we should...
See, self-defense is non-negotiable. But this is where we are, and you have to understand it. Yeah, I'm from the south, and there's a saying in the streets. And allow me say it in pidgin English. You know, go feel run past bullets. There's another saying: the man with hold knife, they shout, "Ah, don't die since," because you're dealing with guys who have guns. So at this point, a machete is not your saving grace exactly. Except where you are faced with a machete combat or a hand-to-hand combat. But we are dealing in a situation where these guys are armed with AK-47 and they can release multiple rounds in seconds.
All right, so I want to end this particular conversation on a lighter note because we need to smile today. It's the 1st of April. But look at it. Someone pointed out something interesting to me over time. There has been, I'll go back to what has happened in Nigeria, went viral, and also the like of it happened in the US and also went viral. Someone said in her statement, Bianca Ojukwu said she had to release a slap in self-defense, right? So looking at it, guns and bearing them, are we saying that at this point people could just defend themselves, by going ahead to? Because if I see you and I don't like your face.
Well, if we have to, if we have to close on a lighter note, like you have said, every individual has 2 arms. We're already bearing arms.
All right. Quick break, and when we come back, of course, the Atlantic Blowout continues. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back to Atlantic Blowout right here on Atlantic Television Network, and on to our next story today. Now, this is still around the conversation about terrorism in Nigeria, the Abuja Kaduna attack, and a former president, Goodluck Jonathan, has said that things need to come back to normalcy. He made this statement while condemning the terrorist attack on the Kaduna Abuja train. So reacting to the deployment, Jonathan, in a series of tweets via his Twitter account, asked security agencies to scale up their efforts and restore normalcy to the nation. His post read, "I commiserate with the victims of Monday Abuja Kaduna train attack and the families of the deceased and other Nigerians who have been affected in one way or the other by recent events in our country driven by violent activities or bandits and terrorists. My thoughts are with them as I pray that all those abducted will be rescued and reunited with their families soon. I call on the security and intelligence services to scale up their efforts and ensure that perpetrators of these dastardly crimes are served, and of course normalcy is restored to the land. I urge Nigerians to be vigilant, optimistic, and not succumb to pessimism and fear." And this is what he tweeted. Now, I like his angle, and but I want to pick that word normalcy from it. When it came to the end of his tenure, and the opposition came with a strategy that had a lot of aspersion. It was like an aspersion game that was released back to back, and one thing that was captured in that aspersion game was insecurity on a high note. One thing that was captured was terrorism, or rather the increase of insurgency, which was Boko Haram at the time, and that was one of the premises that one of the promise that brought in a change government. And so normalcy, he is someone who has dealt with terrorism on that level. But what sense of normalcy do you think from a president would expect? Because someone will say, okay, look at it, there was terrorism at his own time, it is still here. That's the first question. And in your assessment, which has been more intense? The Goodluck administration, terrorism in the Goodluck administration, or that of the Muhammadu Buhari administration, considering that the statement has normalcy in it. So what is normal for a Nigerian too?
I would want to believe that His Excellency Ebele Goodluck Jonathan, in his tweets, his response came from a place of honesty. Okay. And when he says normalcy, he means normalcy in every sense of the word, and that it means the elimination of all forms of restiveness, not relative, the actual elimination of all forms of restiveness. It is no gainsay, and it's a no-brainer to you realize that we have had more insurgencies in the last 8 years or last 7 years than we have ever recorded in this country. Even when you look back again, you see actual strides made by the last president to quell insurgencies. For those in the South, he created some kind of programs. We knew that these programs required an exit strategy. But let us leave the conversation of exit strategy at the moment. The point is, he was able to manage the insurgencies at a level. This government has failed at all frontiers. And we have to be grateful that President Goodluck Jonathan was able to manage insurgencies to the point where he did, because I try to think, if we still had the militants from the Niger Delta ravaging as they used to, and then coupled with the current state of insurgencies, I'm not sure this country would feel like Iraq. But he was able to manage that part, and then to a degree manage the insurgencies from the north. We will have to credit him, because at the time also, the part of the challenges we had was the fact that insurgency from the north was also funded to destabilize his administration. Now it's out of control. It is completely out of control, and it's a problem we all have to deal with.
So, in the same studio, you also mentioned that there is some form of involvement with the government because of how. Don't you think that this other insurgencies are also somehow being funded by someone?
Yeah, of course. It's a fact that it's
to
being
discredit, of course, President Muhammadu Buhari and his government.
Well, I wouldn't want to think so. I wouldn't want to think so. I wouldn't want to think so, because the process, we already had insurgency prior to his coming into office. So, and it's not new insurgency. We are still on the back of the kind of insurgencies, except of course for the Niger Delta, that existed prior to his coming in. So what has happened is he has failed at managing it. He had failed at communicating. And the northern elders have also failed at communicating. I wouldn't want to use the Niger Delta as a case study, but then again, if you look back at the Niger Delta, you'd realize that aside the intervention of the government, there was also the intervention of elder statesmen, and this helped to manage the situation. So beyond coming on national TV and granting interviews and calling for a stop in insurgencies, do the elder statesmen have the reputation to wade into these challenges? These are the questions we want to ask.
Okay. All right. So let's go to Abuja now. I'll go to you, Shola, on this conversation.
Thank you, Nebai. We are having this statement coming from another statesman, and the man that has been there, has seen it all, and he is a friend to Azoro. He's a friend to Villa. He has been moving in and out of Villa, so he will have been giving them one advice or the other. Olumati, do you think Nigerian politicians are capable of hijacking this statement and play politics with it?
Oh yes, of course. If it gives them a window to do that, they will. We're preparing for the 2023 elections. Yeah, anything that gives the Nigerian politician an opportunity to get ahead, he will latch on it. So there are possibilities that they will lay hold on this statement and play politics. So we will not act as if we do not know what are the possibilities. We will embrace our realities and hopefully find a way around it. The possibilities is 100%.
Because ordinarily, former president is part of people that are always sitting at the Council of State meetings, where we have all the former head of state securities to discuss the security of this country. Their decisions, their policies and strategies is not working. They are all together. Do you see it from that angle?
Well, I do not see it from the angle of their decision and their strategy not working. Because at the end of the day, their decision and strategy stops at the table of a single man, which is the president. Okay, so regardless of how good your strategy is, if it will not be approved and implemented, then it's as good as having no strategy at all. So whilst a lot of meetings will go on, we will not judge the strength of that meeting on the meeting itself. We will judge it in actual approval and execution. And I honestly doubt that the takeaway from those meetings have been approved. And if they have been approved, I doubt that they have been executed accordingly.
From our leaders, what kind of spirit do you think we need, they require to have to deliver good service, quality service to the people?
Well, I think that for the most of it, they require empathy. Empathy in the sense that they understand that for what office they acquire, they are privy to privileged information that allows them to prosper and grow. They are well secured. They can do without a whole. They already have a whole lot of what the common man is praying for, and it takes an empathetic leader to look back and know that there are people who are in lack, not for a lack of endeavor, but because the country has not given them an opportunity. And then because they understand this from the point of empathy, they are willing to take responsibility to see that all that is required will be made available for people. In that empathy, you will now find that the man who is empathetic towards another man's plight begins to think of how to solve it. So he gets necessary education. He puts in place everything that is necessary, whether it's security, whether it's water, whether it's food, whether it's preparing the economy and all of that. At the apex of it, what our leaders need is to have sincere empathy for the people.
And we have to just look at it from this angle, see how we can speak to the consciousness, or to the conscience rather, to the conscience of our leaders, because there are a lot of strategy, a lot of documents, policies and what have you to drive the country into good and to safe hands. But they are not yielding.
Exactly.
So that's why I feel that let us a little bit be emotional.
Yes.
Maybe they will listen to us. Thank you for coming from that angle as well.
Thank you very much, man.
All right, Agaji, on to you on this conversation, please.
Yeah, when we talk normalcy, a lot of times we just assume that the normalcy is referring to insurgency. But for Nigeria to live, to be normal, what other aspects of this nation should be looked into to be able to call Nigeria a normal society at that point? Apart from just insecurity, what else, what aspects of this nation can be looked into to make Nigeria normal?
Well, every aspect needs to be looked into. every aspect. Education needs to return back to normalcy. Normalcy. I also grew up in the time where we had Jakonde schools very functional. And if you went to a Jakonde school, you could at least compete with those who also went to a private school. So we need normalcy. The health sector have been abnormal. We still have a lot of issues with that sector. in terms of provision of amenities and all of that. We have many parts of this country are still suffering from a lack of drinkable water. It's not normal to be in such an environment, especially considering the measure of advancement that the world has been greeted with in the last 20 years. We still have a lot of challenge with all of the arms of government in terms of corruption, in terms of insubordination, in terms of illegality, name it. This entire country is not normal, and we need to find normalcy everywhere in this country. In fact, we need normalcy even with the media. So,
but when you're talking about normalcy in education, some people have raised eyebrows at the educational system. They say it should have been something different from what it is. Do you also buy that idea? And if you do, how do you think our educational system should be run?
Well, the educational system should be better. The world is advancing, yeah, and I feel like we are retarding in our own the educational system. So for me, I think that a whole lot has to be looked into in terms of the quality of teachers that we have in the government school. And allow me to be particular about the government schools, because the private schools are a little out of reach for the average Nigerian. So we now come back to where the average Nigerian can at least, have a grip or find expressions. The government school, we have to look back at the government school, the quality of teachers, their routines. We still have situations where teachers go late to classes, where teachers have a rather lackadaisical attitude to these things. And of course, you can't blame them, because they are being owed salaries. Their salary do not even allow them experience the quality of confidence in their humanity, every time, to be the people who design literally the future for us. So we have to look in these dimensions. If we cannot correct these things, there's not so much we can achieve as a people. There is so much about the behavior of a people that is tied to her education, and the quality of that education will define a lot.
I don't know why you're particular about the government institutions when you talk about education, because, okay, for instance, in Lagos here, it seems to be that, not that it seems to be, there are more private institutions than the public institutions. Still, the people we churn out from these private institutions, especially secondary schools, still are far below the standards that we intend for our children to be. So when you are particular about the public institutions, I don't know if you're outrightly leaving out the private ones, or you could also have a word for them to make them better.
Akaji, this conversation is deeper than it seems, yeah? And I hope I'll be able to put it together. The reason why I'm particular about the government institution is because that's where you have the masses attend. That is where the average Nigerian can get his child into and know that he can at least afford it or attempt to afford it. Okay? Now, away from this conversation to what I consider what is even much more deeper. Whilst we use the term education very freely, we also have to understand that in reality, at best, what the schools have been able to give us is academics. And academics is the ability of people to recall what they have been told or taught, so that they can offer it back under a test of some sort. So in academics, what is really certified is the ability to recall. And the ability to recall is not necessarily education. All education begins from the home. So right now, this conversation really is about academics. There is a lot we are requiring from young people that school will never be able to offer. What can offer you that is the community within which you grow in. Whether your immediate community or extended community, be it that you have traveled to some place. That is what will give you actual education with life, I mean, at the end of the day. So they need to be, in this aspect of conversations, we need to be responsible. We need to have more people take up responsibilities as mentors. I had this conversation again just last week, and sorry I have to go in this dimension, but it's so that you can understand. I had this conversation with somebody, a few years ago. Someone walked up to me, an elderly man, and he walked up to me and said, I like you, I like your zeal, I like how you work, but I don't know much about you. However, the reason I am walking up to you is to ask one question: how do you make money? That conversation spanned for about 3 hours. He wanted to know how I make money, and of course I was able to tell him how I make money, but I got something very beautiful from that conversation. He also took the time to show me about 5 different ways which he also makes money, which I added to my portfolio. School will not teach you this, and that is education. That conversation right there is education, which school will not give to you. Okay, so at the apex of it, all of education will be in our community. The best schools will do is offer us academics, and if we understand this, we'll do very well.
Okay, let's go to the economy. The normalcy in economy, what would you propose for Nigeria to do to make our economy normal? We've seen the Central Bank of Nigeria proposing a lot of things, bringing policies that hopefully should take us out of what we are finding ourselves now. Yet we find the dollar going higher, inflation rate going higher, and cost of living going higher and higher every day. So when normalcy is proposed for Nigeria in terms of economy, what do we need to do?
Well, I wish I could sit here and quickly propose top of my head, but in all honesty, that will be difficult for me. So I'll let that slide, and I'll explain why. It's a complex system. One will need to sit down, study across all frontiers to be able to come up with a recommendation that is credible. At this point, in this moment, I will not be assuring you that I can come up with a recommendation I would consider credible in this instance. So I think I do not have an answer to that now, so I'll let it slide.
Yeah, but you are a businessman.
Yes, I am.
Okay, let me just rephrase this. The federal government is saying that the ease of doing business in Nigeria, the indices are going higher and higher, that they are doing very well in that regard. What have you felt? How have you felt this ease of doing business as it affects your own business as a person?
Yeah. While they have this conversation with ease of doing business, you see, the true indices of whether or not there is ease in doing business should go down to the SMEs. Should go down to the SMEs. There really is no ease. It is more complex as we continue to advance. Regulatory bodies continue to make complex the challenge. One moment they are coming up with new additions. However, they are not even making it public to the business entities. So regulatory bodies right now are some kind of trap. It's some kind of entrapment. They just design themselves waiting for who is going to fall short of policies that they don't have public, or policies that the public is not very knowledgeable about. So the ease of doing business is non-existent. It's a conversation for an elite group of people who are well separated from the realities of today's Nigerian economics. There is no ease in doing business right now. I can tell you that. I mean, recently we have the conversation about the limitation on dollar cards. How is business easy when I can no longer transact easily? It's a conversation of people who are far removed from the reality of the Nigerian public.
Okay, all right. So still going to talk about normalcy. Just one last thought. Following your analogy, and following that we're Nigerians, we've checked ourselves on different levels. It looks like the concept of normalcy. This is normalcy for me, right? So I drive to work in the morning. Before 6:30 a.m., most times I see someone yelling. I see someone driving against traffic. I see maybe one or two people throwing punches here, there. I see some guy throwing trash on the road. I see all sorts of funny things, right? I mean, someone says that's normal. Just carry on. You also just expect to look in the news and hear, oh wow, these guys have been raided. The other attack has happened. Oh yes, well, these are the things that happen in Nigeria. So, what can we do as a nation to shift that sense of normalcy from a lot of negative experiences to a place where someone can say, well, this is what is normal in Nigeria, and that normal would not be perceived as utopian or something just far out of reach? That's you, sir.
I'm thinking. Well, Nigeria is such a handful,
Right.
yeah. But we need to find our humanity. We have defined this. We have defined a whole lot, like you have said, in terms of the negative as normal, because we have lived with it for a long time. This is not how we began as a people. I remember seeing footages of Lagos, area footages of Lagos many years ago, to see how clean and how neat and how organized the city was, right? I remember visiting Port Harcourt I was resident in Lagos and visiting Port Harcourt in 2002. In 2002. And one of the most interesting features then, as one who had lived in Lagos, is when you come out to the bus stop and you flag a vehicle, the driver actually reverses.
Okay.
Okay, now you're smiling. I'm like, oh my God, this is different from what I experienced in Lagos, right? But now, that's not obtainable any longer. Everybody has to have the mad craze run, just as it used to be in Lagos. And now that is the new normal. A whole lot will be done, from administration to processes, to get Nigeria to where she has to be. But we have to have a leader that is influential enough, intelligent enough, and active enough to drive a people to a common goal. And don't look too far to understand what I'm talking about. Just look in the direction of Dubai to understand that a single leader can have quality enough to drive a people. I know that complex conversations will come out because of the multiple ethnicity that we have, and you say, oh, Dubai, they speak just one language. I know that, but then again, you still require a leader who has skill enough to drive a nation to see that we can achieve normalcy at this point. And it will not take 8 years from the rot that we have. It's going to take way longer than that. But it has to have a lot of consistency where government is an actual continuum.
Okay, so quick break. When we come back, of course, now we are going to go to an international story. We've stayed off the story on the Atlantic blowout for a long time, and I think it's time for us to come into it. Putin and foreign businesses. Don't go anywhere. Atlantic blowout on the story. Now, a lot has happened. We've watched it unravel. Ukraine is going through a lot. We've seen buildings, and cities in cities and towns in ruins. And also the background of this story, I heard that Russia is also paying machineries to fight this war against Ukraine, and paying them a lot of money. And of course, a particular soldier pointed out that there was even a huge sum of reserve in dollars to pay his family if something happened to him at the war front. So it looks like what started as a joke, as some people would say, has outrightly come out as pure madness. And now some people have analyzed this entire thing President Vladimir Putin is doing as a move to restore the Soviet Union, because he's blaming that sector for, and of course now it is known that Ukraine was a good center, one of the centers of the technology and the machineries that powered the Soviet Union. And it seems like, well, it is some form of take back. Now, there are ways the Russians have tried to explain it, although they are not even one to be diplomatic about what they are doing. But it's been out there. Now, businesses too have been affected. Business people have been affected on different levels. On different levels, oligarchs have lost properties. They've lost access. They've lost a global relevance. A lot has happened. Big clubs have had to change management and the likes, and but there's still a reign of there's still a reign of what will I call it now, diplomatic restrictions and other forms of basically things that are being done to try to contain the president, but it keeps going on. Now he has come out to say that payments now need to be made in rubles for the Russian gas supplies, and the contractors or contracts rather will be halted. So he said that the countries that continue to buy gas from Russia must pay in rubles, or their contracts will not be honored. In a televised statement, he said the switch to rubles was designed to strengthen our sovereignty. He says Russia is piling huge pressure on foreign companies fleeing the country following Moscow's decision to send troops to Ukraine, even as some tycoons warn that the seizure of assets will take the country back to 1917. So the president has approved a plan to nationalize foreign-owned companies, and on Friday, Parliament's lower house is set rather to discuss the initiative of this nationalization. So Russian prospectors have warned that it will be closely monitoring the departing foreign companies, including their adherence to labor laws and procedures for salary payments. So the General Prosecutor's Office has said that every company leaving will be audited for fraudulent and deliberate bankruptcy, and warned against one-sided refusals to fulfill obligation. So Russia's ruling United Russia Party has also gone out of their way to tell the president that a bill had been prepared, and that will be the first step towards the nationalization of the assets of foreign companies and leaving the Russian market. So these and many more are going on with Russia. But let me get your take on this, Almaty Isaiah, because I mean this is the first time I'm catching you on this story. Every time I meet people and I try to have conversations about this Russian story, I like to understand how they think, what they think is going on in the mind of Vladimir Putin. What do you think is going on in his mind?
Well,
going against the world is like a Tupac song, right? What do you think is going on in his mind?
This is what I think, considering the fact that Vladimir Putin is requesting that these organizations begin to pay in rubles. You know, when there is a war, people either get rich or get poor. I see a man who is taking advantage of the war to strengthen her economy. That's what he's trying to do. Because if everybody begins to pay in rubles, it gives their currency an opportunity to gain value in the marketplace. That's what they are trying to do. Or that's what he's trying to do. So it's a smart move. Taking the chaos of the war, it is him trying to bring order in a disorganized situation. To be able to position Russia whilst everybody sees the smoke screen of the disorganization, he takes advantage of it. And then at this point, to coerce every player in the system to begin to pay in that currency. That way, they don't lose money. Because the easiest way is to convert to dollar and take out of the economy. Yeah, but this is what he's doing. If you take it out, you bring it back. Because you have to do business here. And if you have to do business here, you have to pay in our currency. So whatever conversion you're going to make that conversion and pay in rubles. That's what he's doing.
Interesting. All right. I'll go over to Lagos on this one now. Agaji, over to you. Agaji, are you there? If you can hear me, do unmute yourself, please. We can't hear you. Agaji, are you sorted now? All right, I'll let Shola take this one now, and then we'll come back to Agaji. Okay, so before Shola comes on, let me go to the next question. So I have a background in diplomacy, and one of the things they taught us in class was that no nation is an island. I mean, we say it normally, but there is a lot of interdependency that has become what we call the nations of the world right now. There's a lot of alignments that have weaved us together. We are now hearing stories like, of course, because of the war, cost of wheat, no wheat, famine, because of the war, a lot of things are connected. And but Russia seems to be mentally okay, where they are. Do they have enough? Do you think Russia, as a nation, as who they are, do they have enough to operate on this level of isolation that President Vladimir Putin is putting them in? They've been known, obviously, as the other guys, right? But when it comes to conversations about balance of power, Russia is on that table, right? Because they are powerful enough to be on that table. So there are superpowers. When you mention superpowers, you're saying America, you would say Russia. Now China has stepped into that place of being a superpower because of economic power and, of course, technology, right? So Russia, do they have enough to toe this part? Because I don't see them trying to renegotiate. I don't see the boss trying to turn around and go back to say, okay, let's have conversations. There are streams, loads of sanctions have been put out, and these sanctions continue. Do they have enough to play the game they are playing?
No country really, no nation really has enough to live in isolation. However, Russia has been able over the years to position herself in such a way that her strength is in negotiation. They know. So this is it. It's the conversation between Russia and every other country in the world is, to bring it to an easy point, is the conversation between two men.
Right.
When men have issues, they have issues loud, but they still come back and resolve these issues. He knows, regardless of the sanctions, when he is done with what he needs to do, he will sit down. Men will sit down, and they will resolve it. It's not anything great. It's just that they are nations. However, they relate this back to two men on the conversation table. Two men having a disagreement. They will come to some point, and he knows this. Putin is a very intelligent psychologist. So he's playing the psychology game with everybody. He knows at the end of the day, we're going to come back to the negotiating table and make good ourselves. But for now, he has what he needs to achieve. He has a message he needs to send, and he sent that message. Look, you can't dare us. If we say we will do it, we mean we will do it. So everybody has to respect us for what we represent. Yes, and because nations cannot live in isolation, there's stuff from Russia that this nation needs, that nation needs. You will have to come back at the end of the day, find a compromise.
Okay, so he's leveraging on that idea that eventually they will come to fine. But so, because I remember when this started, a few people had analyzed him as something going on in his head. Some people said senile. Some people said he's an old man. That is. Are you telling me that that's demeanor is just a front?
It's just a front. He knows what he's doing. See, every move Putin has made is intentional and calculated to gain world attention and to put Russia in a higher seat of power. Now, they are not going to have a special seat, but it's perceptory. They are selling a perception to the nations of the world. We are Russia. And we are this big. We are this strong. It's an illusion. It's a front, but it's working for them. And they know that regardless of the sanctions you put on them, sanctions are not going to be forever. At some point, we will find a way to sit down and settle our differences. And that knowledge gives him peace at another level.
Okay. I believe Agaji is set to join us now. Agaji, are you there?
Yeah, I've always been here.
Okay.
Can you hear me now?
Go ahead. We can hear you now, please.
Okay. Now that Putin has said that unless you pay with the ruble, you cannot get what you're supposed to get from Russia, and that he was going to terminate some of these contracts from the European Union, from Europe, rather, and Europe is panicking. And on the other hand, Europe is giving a lot of sanctions, heaping a lot of sanctions on Russia and all that. In a war situation, can he really do what he's doing, knowing that there have been all these agreements concerning the contracts that these European countries have with him? Can he really do can he renege on the contracts and say, okay, I'm just cutting you off because you have not done X, Y, Z? Is that possible? Or he has to adhere to the contracts that he signed before the war?
Well, I don't know the contents of the contracts and how far-reaching the clauses are. However, Putin, like Donald Trump, has sold the narrative that if I say it, I will do it, and I will damn the consequences. Tendencies are that he can. There are higher tendencies that he can. He's knowledgeable about what the consequences are, and he's well prepared to go through the consequences. Of course, he does have backup plans.
Okay. Now that this is happening, let me leave Putin and digress a little bit. How can Nigeria leverage on what is happening in Ukraine and Russia? Because you talk energy, you talk oil, we also have oil, we have gas, we have a lot of things, but it seems we are even going poorer when we should have been going richer. How can we as a nation leverage on what is happening in the world scene?
Well, we have to, the best way to leverage in this is to understand, is to learn and understand. You know, I'm not always very quick with the concept of leveraging, because you have to understand the dynamics around what you hope to leverage on, okay? So, but it's important that we are able to learn. We have to be knowledgeable enough to understand what is going on the world scene, then take a place. You can't take a place if you don't understand. So we need to first come to terms with the fact that we probably need to learn a lot. We probably need to come to a point of understanding before we can find a place of leverage.
Right now that this is happening, Nigeria has gone, I would say, maybe it's not the right words to use, but I would say, cap in hand to Europe and said, okay, as an alternative, Nigeria has gas enough to be able to be an alternative supplier of gas to Europe. Yeah. So, and then they still asked Europe to come to Nigeria and build the relevant infrastructure that will enable these, or will make this happen. Do you think we could have pulled it off ourselves without having to go begging? Because that's how I see it. Maybe I'm wrong. These same people that we want to sell these things to, because at the end of the day, they will now become like the people who are paying the, paying the piper, they said, who pays the piper dictates the tune, yeah. So they will now be like the ones that are dictating the tune because they built the infrastructure for us. Could we have pulled it off without having to go begging them to come do that?
I don't think we'd have been able to pull it off as immediate as we need that infrastructure. So and then with the bureaucracy, the amount of money, value of the naira, I don't think we could have been able to pull it off. I think it is okay to have asked them to come and set it up for us. However, I'm going to be worried about the terms of negotiation. Yeah. That's what we have to look at. What are the terms of negotiation and how favorable are these terms to us as a people in the long run? Hoping that it's not a situation where a few people at the higher levels of opportunity in this country hijack it to make an earning for themselves at the detriment of the larger populace of Nigeria.
If you were to advise, what are the things they should be careful when they are writing the agreement? What are the things that they should look out for and make sure they are in the agreement so that we don't fall short or sell ourselves short?
Just generally, I'm going to put it just generally. Whatever they do, however they do, they should just make sure they are not selling off the birthright of Nigerians and selling off our future. It's very important because sometimes one can be so desperate to have something that it does not consider the future. So whatever negotiations that they are having, they have to make sure that they are sure that they are not selling off the future of this nation.
We can't really trust them because we still are not able to find out what the agreement was with the Chinese companies that are coming in here, and the Minister for Transportation did not say much about that. And like we said, or you said at the beginning of this program, the government